One of the most intense battles in Demon Slayer is between Tanjiro, Giyu, and Akaza. As Tanjiro and Giyu make their way through the Infinity Castle, the doors open into floors and the ceilings start shaking. Nakime realizes the best way to defeat them is to split them up. But just as they focus on staying together to reach Muzan and stop him for good, a Kasugai crow appears and shouts that Shinobu Kocho has been taken down by Upper Moon 2 Demon. This news shocks Tanjiro and tears start streaming down his face. Giyu, though also surprised, stays calm enough to notice a talisman, a small paper on the crow's head, and wonders what it's for. The scene shifts to the Ubuyashiki residence. The young Ubuyashiki successor, Kirya, is shown anxiously analyzing the situation and giving orders to the Demon Slayer Corps members. He, along with his two surviving sisters, Quina and Kanata, is wearing the same talisman, which allows them to see the battlefield and understand what's happening. Even though Kirya is only 8 years old and has recently lost most of his family because of Muzan, he stays focused on the battle and making sure the Hashira and Demon Slayers survive long enough to defeat Muzan. He doesn't cry and won't let himself shed a tear until it's all over. The paper talisman that Kirya and his sisters wear allows them to share Yushiro's vision, seeing what the crows flying over the battlefield see. These talismans are called the Eyes, and Kirya wants to make sure they deliver as many as possible to help the fighters. Back with Tanjiro and Giyu, they're worried because the others are already risking their lives, and they haven't even encountered an upper-rank demon yet. As if summoned by their thoughts, a veiny fist suddenly smashes through the walls above them, crashing down floor after floor. Giyu and Tanjiro don't know what's happening, but the entire building shakes like an earthquake is coming toward them. Tanjiro, still in shock from Shinobu's death, panics, wondering if someone is fighting someone else about to die. Giyu shouts to calm him down, but Tanjiro's sharp sense of smell warns him of an incoming demon. At the same time, Giyu orders him to move out of the way. With a loud crash, nearly breaking the floor they're on, Akaza lands in front of them, pieces of wood flying everywhere from the damage he caused. He greets Tanjiro with a wicked smile, surprised he's still alive considering their previous encounter during the fight with Rengoku. Tightening his muscles, Akaza dashes at Tanjiro in an instant. Tanjiro, remembering what Akaza did to Rengoku, yells his name in anger. Without wasting a moment, Tanjiro activates his sun breathing technique, unleashing Fire Chariot. Just as Akaza's fist is about to hit him, the attack sends Tanjiro flipping through the air, dodging the blow safely. Tanjiro quickly tries to slice Akaza's arm, knowing that if he can't do that, he has no chance of beheading the demon. Giyu watches closely as Tanjiro, with a powerful shout, cuts off Akaza's arm. Relieved that the move worked, Tanjiro prepares his next attack, but Akaza is already fully healed, his fist inches from Tanjiro's face. Tanjiro, just in time, uses Parhelion Rainbow to dodge, shocking Akaza as Tanjiro ends up behind him. As Akaza realizes his attack missed, a deep slash opens across his face. Giyu stands in awe of Tanjiro's incredible improvement in breathing techniques, now comparing him to a Hashira. The difference between the fierce, relentless fighter Tanjiro is now and the boy Giyu first met, crying in the snow, is like night and day. Giyu can tell from these techniques that Tanjiro will neither die nor lose to Akaza. As if reading Giyu's mind, Akaza agrees with what Kyojuro Rengoku had said about Tanjiro in the past, that he's strong. Akaza acknowledges Tanjiro's strength and even respects him for reaching this level. But that also means Akaza won't hold back anymore. Taking a stance with no openings, Akaza activates his Blood Demon art, releasing a wave of power around him that forms a compass on the ground. With a smile, Akaza realizes this fight will be truly fun. Sensing the battle has intensified, Giyu unleashes his third form of water breathing, Dance of the Swift Current. He moves gracefully around the room, creating ribbons of water as he dodges every attack with ease. Akaza is both impressed and excited, cheerfully noting that it's been years since he last fought a water Hashira. Wasting no time, Akaza responds with Destructive Kick, War Style, a powerful blast from his fist that forms a nearly invisible wall. Giyu remains unfazed, using his 11th form, Lull, which causes the chaotic energy to dissipate instantly around him. Akaza brightens up even more, never having seen such a move from the water Hashira he previously defeated. Seizing the moment, Tanjiro leaps forward with Dance of the Fire God, Scorching Crimson Mirror, creating a circle of fire. But Akaza vanishes and reappears behind Tanjiro, ready to decapitate him with a blade-like hand. Before Akaza can strike, Tanjiro counters with Parhelion Rainbow to halt the attack, while Giyu joins in with Water Wheel. Together, they successfully sever Akaza's arm, though it quickly regenerates. As Giyu tries to keep Akaza at bay, Tanjiro aims for Akaza's legs with Flame Dance, hoping to throw him off balance. But Akaza, sensing the plan, switches to leg-based attacks and launches Tanjiro into the air with Cap Tip Slice. Though Tanjiro blocks most of the impact with his sword, the sheer force causes blood to burst from his nose. Giyu steps in, giving Tanjiro a moment to recover. He swings his sword with such skill and elegance that even Akaza compliments him. Akaza demands to know Giyu's name, but Giyu refuses to give his name and to speak because he does not like talking. Laughing, Akaza vows to keep asking and unleashes Explosive Flurry, a rapid series of kicks that send Giyu flying through several walls. Tanjiro, terrified for his comrade, screams out for him as Akaza smirks, finally learning Giyu's name. With no time to waste, Tanjiro prepares an attack while Akaza readies his own. Bones Burning Sun and Dual-Layered Demon Wick are unleashed at the same time. The timing helps Tanjiro avoid being thrown too far back, though he is still sent sliding across the floor from the impact. Akaza, clearly impressed by Tanjiro's rapid improvement, even thanks Kyojuro for helping him grow so much. Cracking his knuckles, Akaza smiles contentedly as Tanjiro tries to catch his breath. But when Akaza remarks that none of this growth would have been possible without Kyojuro's death, dismissing his values as worthless compared to the opportunity of becoming the strongest demon, Tanjiro freezes. All his panting stops, and his eyes widen as he remembers Kyojuro. His expression turns monstrous, more fearsome than some of the demons he's fought. Tanjiro warns Akaza to stop speaking about Kyojuro, threatening him not to say another word about his fallen friend. Akaza, confused by the reaction, continues, saying he dislikes weaklings and is actually praising Kyojuro for pushing Tanjiro to this point. He compares weak people to weeds that need to be removed by nature. Tanjiro counters by reminding Akaza that he too was once weak, needing the protection and help of others. With resolve in his voice, Tanjiro declares that this will be the end of Akaza and his flawed way of thinking. For some reason, this strikes a nerve in Akaza, causing him to clench his fist, his veins practically bursting out of his skin. As the focus shifts to Akaza's inner thoughts, it becomes clear that his frustration with Tanjiro goes beyond viewing him as weak. Despite Tanjiro's undeniable growth as a demon slayer, Akaza finds himself instinctively irritated and bothered by his very existence. It's as if something about Tanjiro touches a nerve in Akaza, pushing him into a frustration he hasn't felt with other opponents. Suddenly, Akaza feels a warm hand on his shoulder and hears words echoing what Tanjiro had just told him. An unknown man's voice advises Akaza that his true opponent is himself and that he should focus on surpassing who he was yesterday. The man continues, saying that with such a mindset, Akaza could help others in only a few years. Already on edge from Tanjiro's words, Akaza, in a fit of rage, swings to strike the man's head, but his hand meets nothing but air. The figure isn't real. This moment startles Tanjiro, who can't understand why a fighter as precise as Akaza would strike at empty space. But for Akaza, the reminder of his painful past has only fueled his irritation, turning it into a boiling fury. In an attempt to block out these memories, Akaza charges forward with his technique, Willow of 1,000 Flashes, attacking relentlessly. His blows come at Tanjiro with such speed and force that dodging becomes nearly impossible. Each strike is precise, powerful, and unrelenting. Sweat pours down Tanjiro's face as he tries to hold his ground, realizing that something has changed in Akaza's attacks. Suddenly, Akaza is in his face, switching to his devastating leg attacks. With Ring of 1,000 Flying Planets, Akaza stands on one leg while the other spins and slices through the air with terrifying strength. Even though Tanjiro can predict where the attacks are coming from and blocks many of them, the sheer intensity of Akaza's movements is overwhelming. The blows land and Tanjiro coughs up blood, realizing that Akaza's strikes seem to be drawn to his vital spots like a magnet. Desperate for a moment to assess what makes Akaza's attacks so unavoidable, Tanjiro uses Soaring Flame Haze. This technique creates a barrier of flames between them, allowing Tanjiro to momentarily distance himself and obscure Akaza's vision. The haze warps the appearance of Tanjiro's sword, making it harder to track. Akaza, using all his speed and skill, is still caught off guard. His neck is sliced cleanly through by Tanjiro's move. Despite watching the blade closely, even Akaza can't comprehend what happened. He thought the sword had somehow stretched within the flame, but it was too fast for even him to fully grasp. The intense battle is momentarily set aside, shifting to young Senjuro Rengoku, who is shown praying for both his father, Shinjuro, and Tanjiro's survival in the life-or-death struggle against Muzan. In the past, Shinjuro, in his grief, had destroyed valuable history about the sun-breathing techniques, information that Tanjiro needed. However, Senjuro had managed to uncover some new details. He sends a crow to deliver the newly found writings to Tanjiro, but with the crow still carrying the letter, Tanjiro won't be able to read it until his fight with Akaza is over. Back in the heat of the fight, Tanjiro unleashes a Dance of the Fire God move called Flame Dance, slicing straight down through the air. But Akaza catches Tanjiro's blade between his flattened palms, grinning menacingly. Just as he's about to snap the sword in half, Tanjiro headbutts him. The blow that could knock out most opponents barely phases Akaza, who heals instantly and keeps smiling, his grip still unbroken. Thinking quickly, Tanjiro swings his leg upward, trying to knock Akaza off balance to free his sword. But Akaza holds firm, refusing to let go. Suddenly, foaming water appears at Akaza's wrists, slicing both his hands off, allowing Tanjiro to finally break free. Giyu has returned, battered and sore from being thrown earlier, but filled with fury and ready to rejoin the fight. We get a rare glimpse into Giyu's mind, where he reveals his deep dislike for fighting and confrontation, especially when it involves using his sword. Despite being a Hashira, Giyu has never fully tapped into his true strength, because until now, none of the demons he faced were a real match. But in this battle, Giyu realizes he has unlocked a hidden power within himself. Tanjiro watches his friend with concern, noticing something different. Giyu has awakened the Demon Slayer mark. This mark is known to increase power, but at the cost of shortening a Slayer's lifespan. Fully aware of the risks, Giyu embraces this inevitable battle and charges at Akaza, his sword ready to strike. His blade aims straight for Akaza's neck, and Akaza, taken by surprise, barely manages to dodge the attack. Akaza counters with a powerful punch, but Giyu ducks, avoiding it, and quickly retaliates with another swing, his water-breathing technique slashing through the air in a perfect circle. Akaza is forced to jump back, but Giyu wastes no time, immediately closing the gap between them and coming face-to-face with the demon. With swift precision, Giyu unleashes Striking Tide, a graceful technique that forms an S shape in the air. Every part of Akaza's body is at risk, and while the attack slices through his arm lengthwise, Akaza heals faster than before, maintaining intense eye contact with Giyu, preparing for his next move. Tanjiro realizes that despite Giyu's increasing speed, Akaza is starting to adapt as well. Unlike demons, humans have limited stamina and can't heal instantly. If the fight drags on, not only will Giyu lose his current pace, but they'll also fail to reach Muzan in time. Trying to calm his mind, Tanjiro returns to a crucial thought. What allows Akaza to read their movements so effortlessly? It hits him. Akaza mentioned a fighting spirit during his battle with Kyojuro. Tanjiro wonders if this is comparable to his own heightened sense of smell, or Inosuke's instinctual ability to detect malicious intent. In a flashback, Tanjiro recalls how Inosuke's skin can sense incoming attacks, but only when the attacker has ill intent. If someone without hostility, like the old woman from the Wisteria house, approaches him, he can't sense them. This led Inosuke to train himself to suppress his hostility, allowing him to sneak up on opponents before they even realize they're in danger. Tanjiro had once thought this was easier said than done, but now in the heat of battle, he begins to understand the importance of dampening fighting spirit. The question is, how can he do it? His time for contemplation runs out as he notices Giyu struggling more than before. Without hesitation, Tanjiro uses Flame Dance, aiming to stab Akaza from behind. Akaza catches the blade, turning toward Tanjiro with a furious glare. Akaza's grip tightens, and Tanjiro finds himself wide open for a counterattack. Just as Akaza thrusts at him, Tanjiro's body instinctively arcs away from the strike, narrowly avoiding it. At that moment, Giyu slashes at Akaza's stomach, though the blade barely causes any damage. Akaza retaliates with a flurry of punches, striking in all directions while continuing to avoid Giyu's water-breathing techniques. As Tanjiro watches this chaotic exchange, he finally begins to piece together a solution. When Tanjiro's father was still alive, he was calm and peaceful, even as his illness grew worse. His mood stayed steady, and he was a very constant man. But that didn't mean he had no feelings. Tanjiro clearly remembers his gentle smiles and soothing voice. Back then, Tanjiro couldn't understand how his father could perform the Dance of the Fire God with his frail body, especially since it took so much focus and effort and had to be done every year. Tanjiro even offered to take his place, but his father said it wasn't difficult for him. In fact, it was easier for him as an adult than it had been when he was younger. The secret, he explained, was doing the movements efficiently and breathing properly the whole time. Repeating this process over and over brings a sense of calm to the person doing it, because they must be aware of every part of their body, down to the blood in their veins. With enough practice, controlling each part of your body becomes as natural as blinking. The final step of the dance allows you to reach the transparent world, but only after pushing your body to its very limits. After this conversation, 10 days before he passed away, Tanjiro remembers his father protecting him from a bear attack. His father had prepared bells and lights in case the bear came near their home, and it did. The bear stood nearly 3 meters tall, but Tanjiro's father didn't hesitate to face it, staying as calm as he always had. He warned the bear that if it tried to hurt his family, he would take its life. The bear had a wild, hungry look, but with what seemed like a single swing of the axe his father was holding, the bear's head hit the snow with a splash of red. There were 2 quick strikes, but his father's calmness never faded. This was meant to teach Tanjiro how to defend himself if needed in the future, as his father's face was already so thin and weak from his illness. With that memory, Tanjiro remembers how he narrowly dodged what could have been a deadly attack from Akaza, while moments later, Giyu wasn't able to avoid another. Tanjiro briefly caught sight of the transparent world, a place that reveals the inner workings of even a demon like Akaza, down to his muscles and bones. Understanding this world gives the ability to see and react faster than ever before. At the same time, Tanjiro becomes more aware of his own body's movements, gaining better control over them. Giyu, still fighting despite his growing injuries, unleashes an attack in the form of a fierce water dragon. He continues facing Akaza, slashing at his neck, but never deep enough to finish him. Giyu wonders if it's a matter of his own skill or if Akaza is simply too good at predicting his moves. Just by looking at Akaza, it's clear he is an upper-rank demon, having focused only on becoming the strongest fighter in history. Akaza catches up to Giyu in an instant, smiling as he taunts him, knowing that the water Hashira has nothing left to give and no more secret techniques to use. Tanjiro clears his mind, focusing with a determination he's never felt before, knowing his moment to act is coming soon. Giyu strikes again with another water-breathing technique, but Akaza punches the sword from below, breaking it cleanly in half. With full confidence, Akaza declares this is the end of their battle, aiming to strike Giyu in the chest, just like he did with Kyojuro. But before he can even touch Giyu, his entire hand is cut off. Both Akaza and Giyu share the same look of surprise as Akaza's hand falls behind him. With perfect focus, Tanjiro is revealed to have used the Dance of the Fire God to sever it. Giyu, noticing how different Tanjiro seems, is amazed by how quickly Tanjiro saved his life. Similarly, Akaza's sharp instincts tell him to take down Tanjiro before it's too late. With a powerful stomp, Akaza summons his compass again and uses his final form, Chaotic Blue Metal Afterglow, speeding up his attacks, making it even harder for Giyu to keep up. But Tanjiro stays calm, even taking a moment to think about his father's teachings. The transparent world opens up to him fully, and now he can see through both Akaza and Giyu's bodies with ease, his focus so intense that time feels like it's slowing down. Giyu is in terrible pain, his injuries too much to bear. Akaza's speed is overwhelming, landing 100 strikes in an instant. Even using Dead Calm, Giyu couldn't block most of the blows, though he managed to avoid anything fatal. Akaza compliments him for surviving, unlike Kyojuro and Tanjiro, unaware that Tanjiro is quietly standing behind him, ready to strike. Though talking to himself, Giyu urges Tanjiro to act, as this is his best chance to attack since the demon is unaware, and Tanjiro isn't as hurt as him. With a battle cry, Tanjiro shouts, revealing his position to Akaza. The demon reacts instinctively, swinging his arm, but he misses. Akaza wonders how Tanjiro survived but believes it won't be for long, especially with his compass able to detect every move through fighting spirit. Yet, Akaza starts to notice something strange about Tanjiro. He has no fighting spirit at all. This unsettles Akaza, causing him to lose focus. In that moment, with a fiery swing through the air, Tanjiro slices off Akaza's head, having jumped above him. Giyu is left stunned, while Akaza is in total disbelief. In all his hundreds of years, Akaza has never encountered someone with no fighting spirit, not even a newborn baby lacks it. It was almost like fighting a tree, and Akaza couldn't react fast enough to protect his neck. But Akaza has lived too long to give up easily. He believes every situation can be adapted to, and every battle can be won if he learns and responds to it. But now, he has lost his head, and his ultimate goal, to Tanjiro. The peak that Tanjiro has reached is the very same level of power that Akaza has been chasing for centuries. Knowing that such a peak can be reached, Akaza cannot allow himself to fall so easily. Before his head can hit the ground, he grabs it with both hands, trying to force it back onto his body. But Giyu throws his broken sword like a spear, piercing Akaza's head and knocking it down. This means little to someone as determined as Akaza. His mind is racing with the desire to grow stronger, to overcome even death itself. As his head begins to crumble, Tanjiro lets out a sigh of relief, his body trembling from the strain of tapping into the transparent world. But somehow, Akaza's body still stands tall, even though his head is gone. Giyu cannot believe his eyes and starts to panic. Akaza stomps his foot once more, summoning his compass with Tanjiro standing closest. Giyu worries that Tanjiro won't realize what's happening in time. Akaza swings at Tanjiro, who barely dodges the attack. Akaza's neck wound seals itself, trying to regrow the head he just lost. Tanjiro is too exhausted to keep fighting, and a powerful kick from Akaza sends him crashing into a wall, the pieces crumbling around him. Some demons like Daki and Gyutaro require extra effort to defeat, but Akaza isn't like them. Through sheer willpower, Akaza wants to evolve beyond what any demon is capable of. Tanjiro can see this just by looking at him. He also knows he has to keep fighting, but Tanjiro passes out from exhaustion. Giyu, not wanting Tanjiro to be harmed, forces his body to move again. He grabs his broken sword from the ground and rushes toward Akaza, using Striking Tide to create some distance between Akaza and Tanjiro. Giyu slashes Akaza's chest multiple times, but Akaza's healing remains unmatched, even without a head. Giyu tries more water-breathing techniques, but his body can't keep up. Akaza's body, guided by instinct, knows it must finish off Tanjiro while he's unconscious and turns to attack him once more. Giyu, covered in wounds with blood all over his face, tells Akaza to wait, saying that he must face him first before Tanjiro. As Akaza prepares to attack, a memory from his past comes to mind. He remembers a man telling him that a sword isn't needed to have an unbreakable spirit. Strength comes from within, and a person only needs their fists to fight. This thought irritates Akaza, and he gets ready to strike Giyu down, but a young woman suddenly grabs his arm. She calls him by his human name, Hakuji, with tears in her eyes, begging him to stop. Even though Giyu wants to protect Tanjiro, who has passed out, he knows he doesn't have much strength left. He's losing his vision, is close to passing out, and can't hear from his left ear. His right hand is numb, but he still has a little energy. It feels like he's been sprinting for hours when he should have only run for seconds. All his muscles are giving out, and he's facing one of the strongest demons in existence, upper rank 3. Still, Giyu stands firm, wanting to protect those he cares about. Meanwhile, Akaza is struggling with his own emotions as the young woman pleads with him to stop. She asks him to come with her, but he insists that he must defeat the Demon Slayer. When she asks why it's so important, Akaza recalls that he needed to be strong for a reason long ago, to bring something back that he couldn't get before. This memory leads him back to when he was human, trying to get medicine for his sick father. Back then, Hakuji had to become stronger to fight and steal so his father could get the medicine he needed because he wasn't strong enough. The people he stole from beat him, and the magistrate was told about what he did, punishing him for his crimes. They even tattooed both his arms to show what he had done, and there was always the threat of losing a limb if he did it again. But no matter how much they warned or hurt him, Hakuji just laughed in their faces, his body covered in cuts and blood. The magistrate couldn't understand how an 11-year-old boy could already be so lost, constantly being arrested and punished without showing any sign of regret. They called him a demon child, but Hakuji didn't care what they said as long as he could bring medicine home to his father. Sadly, it didn't work out. The neighbors told him his father had taken his own life out of shame. Hakuji stood there in shock, his eyes still swollen from a fight earlier. He was given a note from his father, which he brought to his father's grave. His father blamed himself for Hakuji's actions, saying that stealing wasn't a life worth living. Hakuji knew this wouldn't have happened if they hadn't been poor and didn't need medicine in the first place. Grieving at his father's grave, Hakuji cursed the world for treating them so harshly. Seeking revenge, or maybe just a way to release his anger, Hakuji went on a rampage, fighting samurai with his bare hands. Every punch reminded him of losing his father to the cruelty of the world. Unlike his frail father, Hakuji didn't mind getting hurt if it meant his father could live. As his father's condition worsened, Hakuji wanted to steal more to help, but it only led to more trouble, with his father giving up in the end. Furious, Hakuji continued fighting the samurai until they couldn't stand anymore. Then, a man in a white outfit appeared, clapping, impressed by Hakuji's strength. The man had come to save Hakuji from the samurai but found them all unconscious while Hakuji was fine. Smiling, the man commented on Hakuji's talent. In the present, Akaza didn't know who this man was. The man invited Hakuji to his dojo, but still angry, Hakuji didn't want to go. That changed when the man pointed to Hakuji's tattoos and prepared to teach him a lesson through fighting. In no time, Hakuji was being beaten, unable to stand a chance. Afterward, the man brought Hakuji to his dojo. His face swollen and bloody, Hakuji followed unwillingly. The man introduced himself as Keizo. His dojo practiced a martial art called Soryu, but it had no students. Keizo asked Hakuji to take care of his daughter, who was sick. Keizo admitted that his wife had drowned herself, overwhelmed by exhaustion. This struck Hakuji, as he had just lost his father the same way. Keizo understood him. Still, Hakuji worried it wasn't right for someone like him to be at the dojo, but Keizo just laughed, reminding him that he had easily beaten him up. Akaza then realized why he couldn't stand Tanjiro. His existence reminded him of a painful past he had long forgotten. He remembered a young girl named Koyuki whom he had fallen for as he watched her coughing in bed, just like his father. Akaza realized all the promises he made in the past were broken, making him feel like a liar. Koyuki, like his father, always apologized for being a burden, even though they suffered so much. She was weak and needed Hakuji's constant care, so she felt bad for keeping him from enjoying life. But for Hakuji, it was just like what he had done for his father. Koyuki insisted he go to the fireworks, and he agreed as long as she let him carry her there to enjoy it too. If she wasn't well enough, they could go another year when she felt better. This made her cry because she felt bad for holding him back. It annoyed Hakuji when Koyuki cried in the middle of their talks. He understood it was tough for her to be stuck in bed, but it still made him uncomfortable. Later, as Keizo and Hakuji drank water from the dojo's well, Keizo pointed out how they were alike, wanting to protect and fight for others. He even compared Hakuji to a guardian lion statue, a komainu. In the past, Keizo had saved an elderly man from bandits and was given the dojo in thanks. Sadly, others wanted the dojo and harassed Keizo and his students until they all left. That was until Hakuji arrived and became a student, as well as Koyuki's caregiver. After 3 years, Hakuji turned 18 and Koyuki was well enough to live more normally. Keizo wanted Hakuji to be his successor and to be Koyuki's partner. Hakuji was surprised because he never imagined a criminal like him having a future, especially one where someone loved him. He had only known fighting and being hated. This opened up new feelings for him. He hadn't thought it was possible to turn his life around, but it seemed like he could. These two people had become so important to him that he visited his father's grave to share the good news. But his happiness didn't last. Even without his demon powers, Hakuji felt that something terrible was waiting for him at the dojo. On his way back, he learned that the well had been poisoned and his future was shattered just like that. Not being able to save his father haunted him, and now, once again, he wasn't there when the people he loved needed him most. During the fireworks, when Koyuki was feeling well enough to go, she knew how different Hakuji was. He saw a future for her, even though her illness seemed impossible to cure. She proposed to him there, telling him that he was good enough for her. Not even her parents believed she would recover, but he did. That was when he promised to take care of her for the rest of her life, a promise he sadly couldn't keep. The magistrate's office had kept records of not just their deaths, but also the 67 others caused by the only surviving student, Hakuji. He had attacked the members of a nearby Kenjutsu dojo with his bare hands, smashing their heads, crushing their bodies, and tearing them apart. It was a horrible sight, and when a maid discovered the scene, she was so shocked that she lost her sanity. Even though it was a fact, the event was so unbelievable that after 30 years, the story was erased from the records. After the incident, Hakuji wandered the streets, covered in the blood of those he had attacked. His fists were still dripping with it. That's when none other than Kibutsuji Muzan found him. Muzan had heard what happened and thought it must have been the work of a demon. In his grief, Hakuji didn't care who Muzan was and warned him to get out of his way, or he would hurt him too. But instead, Muzan pierced Hakuji's head with his hand and injected him with his blood. Even with Muzan's fist inside his skull, Hakuji didn't care about anything, lost in his sorrow. Hakuji's memories faded away, and he became Akaza, someone who only sought strength since he no longer had anyone to care for or protect. Akaza, unable to die but not truly living either, knows he can never be with his loved ones because of all the terrible things he has done. He didn't want to be reminded of his past, of how easily his family was taken from him, of how precious their lives were. Tanjiro suddenly jolts awake, remembering he's still in a fight with the demon. At this point, most of Akaza's head had already regenerated, with only a small part missing. Akaza was preparing to attack Giyu, who could barely stand. Tanjiro tried to rush in and help, but his grip on his sword slipped, sending it flying away. Despite this, Tanjiro didn't back down. He threw a punch that landed right on Akaza's face. This hit triggered Akaza's memory of Keizo, who had once punched him to knock some sense into him as a child. Akaza was meant to grow stronger to protect others, but instead he had let his anger take over. He allowed weak people to poison the well, fought for revenge instead of protection, and ruined Keizo's dojo. He also broke his promise to his father to turn his life around, realizing that he was truly the weak one who needed punishment. As Akaza prepared to unleash a powerful attack, Tanjiro decided to try and run away with Giyu, as they were too weak to keep fighting. Giyu shouted for Tanjiro to save himself instead, but just as Akaza launched his attack, he looked into Tanjiro's eyes and turned the move on himself. Akaza's body was filled with holes, exposing his spine, yet it still tried to heal even as he willed it to stop. There was no regret for losing this fight. Tanjiro had fought bravely and won fair and square. Akaza knew that hell awaited him, and he wanted to go there quietly. Confused by Akaza's strange sense of gratitude, Tanjiro watched as the demon's body stopped moving, walking towards something only he could see. In his mind, Akaza saw his father, hoping he was at peace now. His father smiled and patted Hakuji's head as he fell to his knees in guilt. Keizo then appeared in place of his father, placing his hand on Hakuji's head. They still loved and cherished him, but he couldn't join them in peace because of all that he had done. As Keizo's hand turned rough, it gripped Hakuji's hair tightly, pulling him back down into his anger and hatred. Muzan's control over him wouldn't let go, but then Koyuki appeared, gently holding Hakuji's face. She told him he had done enough and that there was no need to continue. Looking up at her kind smile, Akaza transformed back into Hakuji, clinging to her with tears streaming down his face. He begged her forgiveness for not saving her, her father, or keeping his promise to his own father. Koyuki cried with him, happy that he had returned to the kind boy she once loved. As Tanjiro watched, the demon's body began to dissolve into ashes. Flames engulfed Akaza in the afterlife, but Koyuki continued to hold him as they were swallowed by the fire. With a sense of relief, Tanjiro started to tear up, glad that they had survived. He remembered that he still had to get back to Tamayo, but passed out before he could take another step. Giyu too was worried for Tanjiro, but he also fainted, leaning on his sword. Both of them were unconscious but still alive.